June 27, 2023. A Russian armored vehicle inches forward through the haze of Zaporizhzhia. The ground looks solid, the road familiar. Then silence, flash, and fire. Within seconds, metal folds, and the crew disappears in smoke. It is one image among hundreds that now define this war. Across Ukraine's front lines, anti-tank mines have rewritten the logic of modern combat. They do not fight armor in duels, they erase motion itself. Every explosion halts more than a vehicle, it stops time, breaks the rhythm of advance, and invites the next strike from the sky. What follows is not chaos, but design. Each buried charge fits into a larger system that is quietly reshaping how Russia fights and how Ukraine defends. Armored and logistics vehicles on the Russian side often carry the highest risk when mines strike, because their protection is limited and their vital role makes them appealing targets. Between 2022 and 2025 on the Ukraine front, the combination of older light armored fighting vehicles, AFVs, and supply trucks has repeatedly illustrated how mines become force multipliers for the defender. Firstly, consider the vehicles like the BMP-2 infantry fighting vehicle and the BTR-82 armored personnel carrier. These designs prioritized mobility and firepower, not heavy protection underneath the hull. When a blast-type mine detonates beneath the belly or tracks, the thin armor gives little resistance. The widely used Soviet-era TM-62 series typically contains about 7.5 kilograms of explosive material. When that much charge goes off under a vehicle, the energy is channeled into the tracks, suspension, fuel tanks, and crew compartment. In many documented cases, the blast tears apart the undercarriage and triggers fires, leaving the crew little chance to escape. The result is not just a damaged vehicle, but often a burnt shell where the crew cannot survive. Secondly, on logistic trucks the effect is magnified. A supply truck carrying fuel, ammunition, or spares may seem less glamorous than a tank, but in modern warfare its importance is enormous. When mines are planted along known supply routes, the effect is twofold. The truck is destroyed, and the route is disrupted, halting the flow of materiel. One observed incident from 2022 showed a supply truck hit by a German-made off-route device while on a logistic route, instantly blocking the road to frontline positions. Because these trucks are less heavily armored than even light AFVs, a mine detonation almost always results in full loss. The operational consequence is that a battalion's supply chain is interrupted, engineers are diverted to recovery, and tempo slows substantially. Thirdly, the combination of thin belly protection and predictable route dependence makes Russian light armor and logistics trucks especially vulnerable. Mines laid beneath ruts, forest tracks, or narrow village approaches exploit exactly how these vehicles were designed to move on the assumption of terrain passability and speed. Yet when a mine is triggered, the vehicle stops, sometimes in the middle of a track, and the crew becomes exposed. After the strike, recovery and evacuation become vastly harder, especially under fire. That moment of immobilization often marks the turning point between survival and complete loss. Fourthly, the psychological and operational ripple effects are significant. Crews learn to expect that every track slip, every forest gap, every rutted path could carry hidden explosives. Artillery and drone operators know that a stalled convoy is a fixed target. The mere presence of mines forces the opposing force to slow down, allocate engineers, scout routes more thoroughly, and avoid obvious or pre-used axes of advance. The cost is time, ammunition, fuel, and morale, all of which strain the assault effort. A light AFV or truck lost to a mine is not always listed in a kill report, yet the knock-on impact on maneuver and logistics can be much larger. Finally, this dynamic shows why Ukraine's mixture of mass-emplaced blast mines and targeted off-route systems has been so effective when used against light armor and supply vehicles. When cheap mines are laid in volume beneath likely paths, and more precise systems are reserved for high-value vehicles, the defender maximizes coverage and economy. For the attacker, every forced detour, every slowed convoy, every immobilized truck risks mission failure or cascading losses. Yet to understand their true effect, we must look at what these mines actually do to the heavier combat tanks when the drill is repeated at a higher level of threat. When a mine knocks out a modern Russian main battle tank, it is rarely the armor that fails. First, it is the tank's ability to move that breaks, and once motion stops, strength disappears. Beginning in 2022, as Russian heavy armor advanced into Ukraine, vehicles such as the T-72, B-3, T-80, and the more advanced T-90 series found themselves increasingly vulnerable, not because of hole-in-armor defeats, but because mines and terrain forced them into immobility. In this section, we'll trace how that dynamic unfolded and why it matters. In early March 2022, as Russian armor pushed into Ukraine, the fault line emerged. Tanks rolled forward, but they often skipped engineering support and route clearance. Analysts pointed out early that advancing along long supply lines made any support vehicles and heavy tanks vulnerable. Since then, the pattern repeated. A tank hits a mine, the tracks or suspension fail, the vehicle stops. Once stopped, even a heavily armored turret becomes a liability. For example, recently open-source inventories show Russia has lost at least 202 T-90 tanks, including many T-90M variants, as of October 2025. These numbers suggest that heavy armor is not invulnerable when mobility is lost. Take the mine effect. When a directional or blast mine detonates under or beside a tank, it may not punch through the front armor, but it can shred tracks, destroy road wheels, sever suspension arms, or knock out the engine. A disabled tank cannot steer, cannot change position, cannot retreat or exploit cover. It becomes a fixed target. After the hit, small drones, loitering munitions, or artillery rounds can finish the job. The transcript you provided offers vivid scenes: tank tracks destroyed, turret loses balance, vehicle rendered combat ineffective. That description matches what we observe. The threat is not immediately the armor penetration, but the breakdown of mobility systems. Moreover, because heavy tanks rely on supply chains for fuel, ammunition, spare tracks, and recovery crews, once a tank is immobilized, the cost goes well beyond one vehicle lost. Recovery under fire is dangerous and often impossible, so the tank is abandoned, a hulking piece of metal that serves as propaganda, target practice, or scrap. Russia's need to tap into older stockpiles to replace losses underscores the pressure. While that article emphasizes tanks overall, the logic applies. Immobilized tanks translate into both material loss and tactical paralysis. Consider the moment. A Russian tank column crosses a rutted village lane in early 2023. A mine detonates under the lead vehicle, tracks fly off. The crew battles fire, attempts to reverse. Meanwhile, other vehicles in the column stop. The terrain narrows, movement stalls. Drones circle overhead. The stillness of the tank invites finishing strikes. The column collapses. Such narrative scenes play out repeatedly. They show the only way heavy armor loses is often through a breakdown of mobility, not a frontal duel. What this means for operations is critical. Heavy armor is designed for breakthrough, rapid advance, shock effect, exploitation of gaps. But when mobility is denied, the entire concept collapses. Tanks sit, become targets, and advance grinds to a halt. The losing side doesn't need to outgun its opponent turret for turret. It needs simply to deny movement and force the tanks to deal with mines, terrain, drones, and logistics. Over time, the accumulation of immobile tanks slows the entire offensive force. From a strategic standpoint, the Russians' reliance on massed armor and their historic advantage in tanks is being eroded. Mines and the associated kill chain, from mine to drone strike, mean even the best tanks cannot dominate if they cannot maneuver. That insight removes the myth of tanks as unstoppable behemoths. They are only as effective as the route support and mobility they enjoy. Finally, the morale and operational ripple effect cannot be ignored. When crews see friendly tanks stranded, the psychological shock ripples through units. Recovery times lengthen. Engineering units are overburdened. Commanders change plans. In the bigger picture, losses of high-value tanks, T-90 included, send signals about the battlefield balance. Thus, what we witness from 2022 into 2025 is not just the destruction of tanks, but the erosion of armor's foundational logic. Mobility equals power. And when mobility fails, power fades. If mines destroy the weak outright, their impact on Russia's heavy armor reveals an even deeper vulnerability: mobility itself. When you look at how the war in Ukraine has played out, one of the most striking features is how terrain and movement patterns shape the fight. From 2022 through 2025, defenders have turned natural geography and human habits into deadly traps. In this section, I'll walk you through how choke points, forest gaps, village lanes, bridges, and supply roads have become the setting where mines punish mobility, not brute force. First, consider the idea of a logical route. A convoy of armor or supplies moves through a forest, sees a narrow track or a rutted path, and naturally picks it because it appears faster or more direct. On the 3rd of March 2022, for instance, a Russian tank column pressed into a ruined village street, collapsed under a mine hidden in a rut. That scenario matches the pattern multiple times reported in open-source losses. Because attackers expect freedom of movement through those tracks, defenders exploit the expectation, shape the terrain, and wait. Second, the choke points themselves act like funnels. Bridge approaches, narrow forest trails, village lanes all force vehicles into single-file or limited angles of maneuver. For example, in July 2023 footage, a Russian armored vehicle advanced up a narrow, muddy path through trees and crashed into a mine precisely when trying to cross a natural obstacle. Attackers had few alternatives. Defenders anticipated the route and placed mines accordingly. The result? Movement stops, offensive momentum dies. The index of loss statistics backs this. Russia has lost thousands of tanks and armored vehicles in the war, many of them because of mobility breakdowns. Third, the psychological effect is enormous. When troops hit one predictable route and find it mined, they must assume other logical passages are also dangerous. This forces slower movement, increased engineering presence, route clearance, and hesitation. The cost of safe ground becomes high. One recent report from the KSE Institute noted how Russian logistics networks depend on a handful of roads and remain vulnerable to deliberate interdiction around choke points. As vehicles sit, waiting for engineers or detours, defenders gain time, reconnaissance drones accumulate, and attrition creeps in. Fourth, the placement of mines is no accident, it is calculated. Defenders locate natural crossing points where vehicles will have little choice. Narrow village exits, old bridges, forest tracks that bypass open roads but still carry armor. In one example described in transcript form, a tank passes through a ruined village, sees a rut which looks harmless, and triggers a hidden mine shortly after. That situation shows how the safe-looking route is deliberately chosen by defenders. Over time, the discipline of attacking through these zones degrades, and mobility becomes risk-laden. Fifth, the consequences ripple outward beyond the first vehicle hit. A blocked road or destroyed vehicle can stall an entire column, force units off axis, create backlog in supplies, and complicate command decisions. One destruction of a supply truck on June 5, 2022, halted a vital logistic line for Russian forces and delayed resupply to the front. The column forces either to clear, bypass, or wait. Every moment of delay gives defenders new opportunities to strike. Logistic paralysis replaces individual destruction as the tactical objective. For the viewers and analysts who study weapons and campaigns, the insight is clear. Control of terrain and denial of movement carry far greater weight than any single high-cost platform. Mines planted at key nodes transform the battlefield into a series of programmed traps. When mobility ceases, even heavy units lose their edge. The myth that armor will always dominate loses its hold in the face of geography, mines, and intelligence-driven placement. Yet the explosion itself is only the opening act. What follows defines the new art of destruction. The most important thing to understand about today's battlefield is that a mine explosion is no longer the end of the story. It is the beginning of a much larger kill chain. Since early 2023, Ukraine has linked mines, drones, and artillery into one unified attack cycle, turning every damaged vehicle into a fixed target waiting to be finished. This new chain shows how technology and simple explosives now work together to destroy armor with speed and precision. The process usually starts in a predictable way. A Russian vehicle moves along a forest track, a village lane, or a supply road, and it hits a buried TM62 or an off-route DM22. That first blast disables tracks, suspension, or engine, leaving the vehicle stuck. According to a detailed investigation by The Guardian in May 2023, drones became decisive once vehicles lost mobility, because immobile targets gave Ukrainian units more time to strike and adjust fire. The mine does not always destroy the vehicle, but it removes its ability to move, and once movement stops, the rest of the kill chain activates. The next step is confirmation. Small quadcopters rise into the air, scan the impact point, and send back real-time video to artillery crews or drone teams. Reuters reported in September 2023 that Ukraine's drone units now operate with short communication loops, letting them adjust fire in seconds rather than minutes. This tight link between scouts and shooters means the defender can react while the target is still burning and before recovery teams arrive. Each moment matters because the longer a tank or IFV stays still, the easier it becomes to hit. After the first drone spots the immobilized vehicle, the kill chain shifts to the strike layer. Loitering munitions, FPV drones, or precision artillery shells move toward the fixed target. In winter 2023, Radio Free Europe/Radio Liberty documented several cases where FPV drones attacked tanks that were already disabled by mines minutes earlier. These drones carry small charges, but when aimed at crew hatches, ammunition racks, or exposed engine decks, they cause total destruction. The mine sets the trap. The drone finishes the kill. The sequence does not end with one strike. Often, a second or third attack is needed. In 2024, Business Insider noted that some FPV operators attacked the same immobilized tank multiple times, using cheap drones costing a few $100s to eliminate vehicles worth millions. This explains why immobilization, not armor penetration, is the real weakness for Russian forces. A tank does not need to be blown apart in the first blast. It only needs to stop moving long enough for drones and artillery to surround it. This kill chain also relies heavily on intelligence mapping. Satellite imagery, ground sensors, and pattern analysis help Ukraine predict where convoys will pass. A study cited by Reuters in mid-2024 showed that Ukrainian reconnaissance units often pre-map Russian routes based on repeated behavior, then combine this information with minefields to force vehicles into kill zones. Once a vehicle is trapped inside one of these zones, the chain activates almost automatically. Mine, drone confirmation, strike drone, artillery finishing shot. The best example of this came in late 2023, when Russian forces attempted to move through a narrow lane near Bakhmut. A tank hit a mine, stalled, and within 2 minutes drones circled. Artillery then struck the area, damaging 2 more vehicles that tried to pull back. The first explosion froze the line. The follow-up fire destroyed the rest. Although each step looked separate, together they formed one continuous kill chain designed to punish every attempt at movement. By 2025, this system has matured. Ukraine now uses mines not just to destroy vehicles, but to feed targets into the drone network. Once caught in that network, escape is rare. The mine takes away motion, the drone takes away safety, the artillery takes away survival. Yet the explosion itself is only the opening act. What follows defines the new art of destruction. The battlefield sequence most forces face today doesn't end with an explosion, it begins there. Since 2023, the front in Ukraine has shown how one mine blast can feed directly into a drone strike and then cross into artillery fire, creating a layered kill chain that moves faster than ever before. What you will hear is not just about weapons, but how timing and systems integration change everything. First, the mine disables the vehicle. A Russian tank or supply truck triggers a blast under its tracks or suspension. The engine stalls and motion stops. At that moment, the defender gains the advantage because the target is no longer moving. According to analysis by the International Center for Defense and Security, ICDS, the Ukrainian model focuses precisely on shortening the time between detection and effect. That means once the vehicle is stuck, it becomes part of the kill chain. Second, a reconnaissance drone confirms the target. Small unmanned aerial systems send live video, relay coordinates, or mark the vehicle for strike units. A recent article described how Ukraine's sensor-to-shooter loop works like an Uber for artillery. The reconnaissance drone acts as the ride-hail. The artillery unit is the driver, arriving within minutes. Because drone pilots are able to operate close to the front line and transmit immediately, the response time falls dramatically. Third, the strike happens either via loitering munition or artillery shell. Some drones now carry thermite charges or incendiary payloads, turning disabled vehicles into fire pits. Business Insider reported how Ukrainian drones with molten thermite payloads inflicted damage over 3,000 degrees Celsius on Russian tanks in 2025. That finish ensures the target is not just knocked out, but rendered irrecoverable. In parallel, Ukraine integrates legacy blast mine belts with off-route systems like the DM-22 and modern drone networks. The mix is deliberate. Cheap mines stop or slow mobility, and precision weapons finish the kill. Using layered weapons ensures no single solution is required. Instead, the tactic is cumulative. Open-source data indicate that roughly 60 to 70% of destroyed Russian systems involve drones in some part of the sequence. That shows drones are not a side element. They are core to the kill chain. Speed is the decisive factor. Where once an artillery unit might require logs, maps, radio calls, and corrections, now the process from target detection to strike takes minutes, sometimes seconds. According to data on Ukraine's drone artillery integration, the loop collapse has reduced decision time by a factor of 3 or more. When a vehicle cannot move and the attacker cannot react faster, the defender wins by default. This layered approach mine disables, drone confirms, strike executes shows that mobility denial and networked precision form the heart of Ukraine's operational advantage in 2023 to 2025. The explosion alone is not the victory. The chain that flows from it is. These layers of defense reveal a deeper strategy, one that values disruption over destruction. Anti-tank mines have become strategic weapons because they strike at the one weakness Russia cannot hide: the need to move. From 2022 to 2025, every month has shown the same pattern. A Russian column rolls forward with confidence. A hidden charge stops the lead vehicle, and within minutes, drones turn the entire line into a series of burning wrecks. Ukraine uses TM-62 belts to slow the advance and DM-22 off-route systems to hit from the side, creating a mix of mass and precision that drains Russia's strength without matching its numbers. Even the T-90M, once promoted as Russia's invincible tank, falls when it cannot move. In this war, a still vehicle becomes a dead vehicle, and a frozen convoy becomes a failed attack. If you want more clear, honest reporting on modern warfare, make sure to subscribe to Military Force. Your support keeps these stories alive.